The military powerhouse Highland, led by Empress Endora, declared the unification of the continent and instigated wars against other nations. Grand Zenobia, the king of Zenobia, one of the countries that resisted, was killed by his former ally, the sage Rashidi, and the land of Zenobia was overrun by the Highland army. All the influential people of the Old Kingdom were purged except for the infant son of King Gran, and the prince disappeared. Highland conquered the entire continent in only 1 year and changed the name of the country to the Sacred Zytagenian Empire. Zytagenia's rule was truly a reign of terror. Those who opposed the tyranny and the survivors of the Old Kingdom faction were mercilessly pursued. While informers and traitors were rampant, the voices of resentment against the tyranny spread throughout the lands, and the security of the empire deteriorated. In this way, 15 years have passed since the founding of Zytagenia. Tristan stood alone on a hill overlooking the encampment of the volunteer army. His allies were preparing for a new battle. The volunteer army, which was initially small in number, now had dozens of troops under its banner. Tristan was one of those volunteers, and in his opinion as well as others, it was inevitable that he would become the general who would lead them. Now that he was in the position of leading an army, he realized that those who were in command had much work. Managing army funds, organizing troops, replenishing provisions and weapons. But if one wanted to achieve anything in the military, they would have to make decisions in everything. Unless someone decided what to do, nothing would progress for the army. For that reason, Tristan was always sought for by someone in the volunteer army. It had been a long time since he was able to be alone, like today.
To think this all started by only 3 people.
The volunteer army began when Estrada, the sword master who trained Tristan's childhood friend Cain, decided to exterminate the bandits who were stealing from the residents and causing them to suffer. That was 7 years ago. At that time, Tristan was 16 years old. He was surprised when he was invited to join Estrada, but at the same time it seemed reassuring. Tristan didn't expect the volunteer army's battle to last too long. At best, he thought it would be over if he got rid of the bandits in the locality. It should have been, but things were not as expected.
I never thought it would be so important.
Tristan looked up at the sky and thought of the distant past. Late in the evening, Tristan and Cain were summoned by Estrada to enter a cabin on the outskirts of the village of Glory.
Sir Estrada, who are these people?
Estrada was not alone in the cabin. 3 men and women stood around him.
These people are those who are like-minded.
Estrada's metal armor had a large emblem on his shoulder rest, indicating that he belonged to the now-defunct kingdom of Zenobia.
Like-minded?
These are people who are prepared to throw themselves into battle to help the weak. Whether you know it or not, these bandits will never stop. That is why I decided to recruit soldiers and form an army of volunteers to help those who are suffering.
As he listened to Estrada's explanation, Tristan clasped his trembling hands as he remembered the time that they fought around Estair. The battle against the bandits was over in no time. Before the swordsmanship of Estrada, there was no way that the bandits' morale could stand up. For Tristan, whose first battle it was, the act of wielding a sword on a living person was fraught with fear. Learning swordsmanship was one thing, using it was another thing entirely. After the battle was over, Estrada had spoken to a trembling Tristan.
Listen, I am a knight, and knights have no hesitation when it comes to using a sword to save people. Remember, peace is something that is created. It never comes naturally.
Surely Estrada, who was a knight of Zenobia, would have no hesitation in using his sword against his enemies. But Tristan was a young man who had only just learned how to wield a sword. Even if it was to save people, was it really all right for him to take the lives of others?
Hey, Tristan.
I would like to organize a unit with a focus on... Do you have any objections?
The people around him didn't show any particular objections. But Tristan realized that he had missed most of Estrada's instructions.
I'll ask Cain later.
Now organize your troops as I've said. Tristan?
Yes? What is it?
I plan to ordain you as a knight of Zenobia.
What? Why would I be a knight?
Tristan, your sword arm is perfect for a full-fledged knight. Stand with me and join this battle.
The people around him were watching with interest to see what the young man would answer. Not knowing what to do, Tristan laughed awkwardly, and when he looked next to him, he saw Cain smiling calmly. His eyes were telling Tristan that he could do it.
I understand. I will become a knight.
Very well, then kneel in front of me.
When Estrada saw Tristan kneel in front of him, he drew his sword and held it in front of him with both hands. At that moment, Estrada desperately suppressed the tears welling up in his eyes. The young man in front of him should not be ordained in such a shabby cabin. He was supposed to be knighted in front of the whole country and blessed by many people. There were no brand new golden spurs or glittering swords. However, throughout history, many knights had been ordained on the battlefield. Thinking about Tristan's future, rather than becoming a knight in a glamorous ceremony, he would be knighted on a harsh and realistic battlefield. Maybe it was an appropriate place to become a worthy warrior.
Tristan, be loyal to the truth and oaths. Resist the forces of evil and strive to uphold justice and communion at all times and in all places. Remember to respect and have compassion for the weak, and do not forget to protect them. I hereby ordain thou as a knight of Zenobia. We would normally have a feast, but unfortunately, we have not been afforded time to do that. The formation of the army will be announced tomorrow morning. Until then, please rest yourselves. Also, Tristan and Cain, you two should stay a little while. Tristan, originally a newly ordained knight, would have armor prepared, but I cannot afford to prepare plate mail. However, that leather armor alone isn't suitable for a knight. There's a cauldron I used when I was younger. Put this on tomorrow. If I get a chance, I'll pack some proper armor. Until then, be patient with this.
Thank you.
Now, Cain, do you know why I didn't knight you?
Sure. It's impossible for me to lead a unit now. I think it's natural for Tristan to be knighted.
Cain had no objection to Tristan becoming a knight. After all, Tristan had always been several levels above Cain when it came to swordsmanship. Even by looking at the sword he was wearing now, that was clear. Tristan held a two-handed sword, while Cain had a one-handed sword. A two-handed sword couldn't be used by one that wasn't very skilled. Besides, Cain had long thought that the role of a knight was not suitable for him. As he listened to Estrada's knight's teachings, he thought he was too rigid to defend people himself.
Well, then there is no problem. Now, Cain, you're going to be in the same unit to assist Tristan. You have been growing up together since you were children. I think if you help each other, you can fight with peace of mind, okay?
I understand. I'll help you, so just think that we're on a big ship.
It will help.
Both of you, you can go back now.
Yes. Sir Estrada, excuse us.
Alone in the cabin, Estrada sighed heavily and held his hands together to offer up a short prayer.
Oh, King Gran, the prince is a fine young man. After what happened, I swear that as long as I live, I will lead the prince to the path of a righteous king. Please rest assured.
The knight, who was once unable to protect his country and his lord, desperately muttered a vow to deliver it to heaven. But no one answered the call.